Hello, my name is Benjamin Lee, and I just want to welcome everyone. It is now 1 p.m., so we'll begin our presentation shortly. Today on December 7th, we'll have our presentation on diverse or not diverse. For help during today's webcast, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box found in the webinar toolbar to the right of your screen, or call 1-800-263-6317. For content questions, please feel free to type those in the questions box, and we'll be able to answer those after the presentation. Here is a list of sponsoring chapters, divisions, and universities. I would like to thank all of the participating chapters, divisions, and universities for making these webcasts possible. These are the list of upcoming webcasts. To register for these upcoming webcasts, please visit utahapa.org webcast and register for your webcast of choice. We're now offering distance education webcasts to help you get your ethics or law credits before the end of the year. These webcasts are available to view at utahapa.org webcast archive. To log your Distance Education CM credits, go to planning.org/CM. Select Activities by Provider, select APA Ohio chapter, then select Distance Education and select your webcast of choice. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and we have up-to-date information on planning webcast series sponsored by chapters, divisions, and universities. We also upload the previous presentations on YouTube. To log your CM credits for attending today's webcast, please go to planning.org/CM. Select today's date, December 7th, and then select today's webcast. This will be available for 1.5 CM credit. We are recording today's webcast, and it will be available along with a 6-slide per page PDF of the presentation. At this time, I would like to introduce Tiffany, who will introduce our presentators for today.
Thank you, Ben. Today we have 4 presenters. Our first will be Mitchell J. Silver. Mitchell Silver is Chief Planning and Development Officer and Planning Director for the City of Raleigh, North Carolina. Mitchell is also President of the American Planning Association, who we are thankful to have this webinar today. As Chief, Mitchell oversees a business enterprise that includes 230 employees, 3 departments, city planning, city development, and inspections, and 4 offices: transportation planning, economic development, development services, and the Urban Design Center. Mitchell serves on the city's executive leadership team with the city manager, assistant city manager, CFO, and CIO. Mitchell is an award-winning planner with over 25 years of experience. He is nationally recognized for his leadership in the planning profession and his contributions to contemporary planning issues. He specializes in comprehensive planning, land use planning, and implementation strategies. Before coming to Raleigh in 2005, Mitchell worked as Policy and Planning Director in New York City, a principal of New York City-based planning firm, a town manager in New Jersey, and a Deputy Planning Director in Washington, D.C. So we thank Mitchell for being part of our panel. Following Mitchell will be Charles Brown. Mr. Brown is a Senior Research Specialist with the Voorhees Transportation Center at Rutgers in New Jersey, where he manages the New Jersey Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center. He has more than 10 years of public and private experience in the field of transportation, including transportation planning, engineering and design, bicycle and pedestrian planning, quantitative and qualitative research, and community outreach. Mr. Brown is passionate about environmental justice and working with minority and underserved communities. Mr. Brown served 6 years in the Mississippi Army National Guard and is a recipient of the Mississippi Commendation Medal and Global War on Terrorism Service Medal. Following Charles will be Karyn Williams, co-founder and executive director of VeloCity. Karyn has over 10 years of professional and educational experience as an urban planner and a landscape architect. Prior to co-founding VeloCity, Karyn worked at Cornell Rothschild and Partners, a landscape architecture firm in New York City where she worked on both large and small-scale public parks, helped to design off-street bike paths, as well as other recreational facilities. Karyn has worked on urban design projects for Pace University and Greenwood Cemetery. As a landscape architect, she has also been involved in all aspects of design, from conceptual planning to the preparation of construction documents. And last will be me, Tiffany Robinson. I am currently a planner at the RBA Group, and I have at least over 7 years of planning experience in local, regional, and statewide planning projects and outreach techniques. Some of my recent projects have included bicycle and pedestrian facility planning, scenic byways, trails, open space, and the New Jersey Department of DOT's Complete Streets. I am one of the founding members and current chair of the APA New Jersey's Ethnic and Cultural Diversity Committee, which was created in 2009. The Ethnic and Cultural Diversity Committee's primary focus is to actively promote and increase awareness among APA New Jersey members for socially equitable planning that embraces the diversity and unique perspectives found in communities across the state. ECDC conducts this outreach to APA New Jersey members and the community at large through its Forethought Forums, an ongoing professional forum that examines emerging planning topics for a diverse community. So we're thankful today to have this platform to be able to speak to more than just our APA New Jersey members. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ben.
Okay, we'll start with Mitch.
Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are in the country. My role is to really talk about the overview of the diversity movement within the American Planning Association. I've been active in it since 1994 when the New York City Metro chapter, when I was at the time a section director, started to initiate a diversity committee, and so that work had carried on once I became on the board of directors, and then I became president. So I wanted to make sure you had kind of the background about diversity and what APA has been doing for at least the last 20 years. So it sets the framework for the rest of the conversation. I always like to start with the role of planning over the past 150 years. While APA, or planning profession, really became a profession in 1909, the roots of our organization was really dealing with social reform. People were moving from the country to the city, and so there was a deep concern among planners, architects, social reformers about how people live. So social equity was really part of our roots. Now, it wasn't focused primarily on diversity, but certainly we were concerned about how planning affected people. And as you look through the period of time, the profession has always changed. Issues have always changed. And as a result, planners had to change and evolve to keep up with the times. And as we move toward the latter stage of 1995 to 2010, we see us moving out of the environmental social justice issue, not that it's going away, and sustainability with a focus on equity. And everybody's asking the question, what's next? Now that we see our country becoming more diverse, what's next? And how do we deal with the changing population? And that's the question that's really before us, is what's next, which helps frame this whole conversation about diversity. If you look at the Articles of Incorporation, when two organizations formed back in 1978 to create the American Planning Association, as you can see, as part of our Articles to Incorporate, physical, economic, and social has always been the foundation of our organization. And our profession really came together to contribute to the public well-being by developing communities and environments that meet more effectively the needs of people and society. So social has always been part of our Articles of Incorporation. But when you shift gears and look at our ethics, we have two ethics. We have one, which are principles for non-certified planners and certified planners, and then the Code of Ethics, which I'll get to in a second. If you look at one of the foundation of our ethical principles is the public interest, to strive to expand choice and opportunity for all persons and plan for the needs specifically of disadvantaged groups and persons. So that is one of the ethical principles of the Planning Association, and it's interesting when you compare planners to other professions, architect, landscape architect. The only one where you actually see a similarity, believe it or not, happen to be public health professionals. But this is one of our principles as planners. And then when you look at the actual code of ethics for certified planners, it talks about our overall responsibility to the public, clearly looking at the long-term consequences of present actions. But most planners don't even know that part of our aspirational ethic is to seek social justice. That is one of the primary roles, one of the code of ethics for our planners, and also to expand choice and opportunity. But here's the last line I want you to pay attention to. It says, planners, certified planners, shall urge the alteration of policies, institutions, and decisions that oppose such needs. And I always ask planners, how often in your day-to-day work do you actually challenge or ask that those policies be altered that actually affect the needs of disadvantaged people? That is an aspirational code of ethic for all of us planners. But it goes further. It doesn't just talk about for the public at large. It talks about our responsibility to our profession and our colleagues. Again, this is from our code of ethics. It says that we shall increase opportunities for members of underrepresented groups to become professional planners and help them advance in the profession. So as when I saw this, that's when I went out to APA leaders and planning departments and planning directors, those that had certified professionals, and saying, can you tell me how you're achieving this aspirational part of the code? It is asking you to reach out and really find those groups of underrepresented individuals to be part of the planning profession and to help them advance in the profession. And it also says that we shall contribute time and effort to groups lacking in inadequate planning resources and to volunteer professional activities, and that is our community assistant planning teams, if you're familiar with it. We encourage those who are certified to volunteer their time to help those who cannot help for themselves. Why is this all important? There's no question that we see the demographics in our country changing. By 2042, there'll be no majority race. And by 2050, if you look at the numbers, we'll have a very different country than we have today. Diversity is now going to become more important, and I think this recent election highlighted the point that as we grow as a nation, communities and regions are going to change, and planners are on the front line. Can America look like the planning profession is one of our challenges. So looking at another way, work done by PolicyLink, you can see the dramatic change of what's going to happen in our population from today all the way to 2050. This issue is becoming more important, not only that we have our aspirational codes, but this is real life. This is happening in real time in communities across the country. We now have 5 minority-majority states: California, Texas, New Mexico, Hawaii, and the District of Columbia. And we'll see more and more states going in that direction throughout the 21st century. So we will see the rise of inclusive communities across the country. By 2023, more than half of all children in the U.S. will be minority, and by 2050, that number will increase to 62%. My question is, we need to be very focused on the next generation of leaders, of innovators, of planners, and they're going to come from diverse populations. So it's a matter of survival for our profession that we have to get our market share and ensure that we reach out to a very diverse population. The implications are going to be broad. Neighborhoods will become more diverse. School diversity policies will be an interesting debate to watch. And there'll be fierce competition for professionals as boomers retire. The planning profession will not be the only one affected. There are similar issues happening to architects, engineers, landscape architects. Across the board, there'll be fierce competition. So the planning profession must be very focused to reach out to other members in our society. So one of the last surveys we took from the American Planning Association back in 2004 was to try to find out the composition of our membership. And what we found essentially was that it was a profession or its membership that was dominated by white, non-Hispanic. As you can see here, back in 2004, nearly 80% of all APA members were were white. And less than 7%, if you add everything up, were essentially people of color. We have a large number of unknown, but the question is, if you compare those numbers to the U.S. population in 2004, it's no surprise that we are underrepresented. Even more so, certified planners, where, as you can see, at that time, 1.7% were black, 1.9% were Hispanic. And if you project that out to 2050, which is the last column, you can see that this is becoming a serious issue that, as a profession, we have to do a better job at reaching out to a diverse population, or we essentially will shrink as a profession, and other professions will have to step in to do the work as planners because we're not getting our market share and we're not incorporating or bringing in more people from a diverse population. Okay, my computer just froze. It's not. There we go. So if you look at what happened in APA, this is just some of the key diversity milestones. It started back in 1979. Women in planning, and then followed the following year by planning in the black community. But in 1994, due to the riots out in LA, APA felt they needed a conscience. They got a conscience and felt they needed to do more in underrepresented communities, and that launched a series of changes. They eventually got a board member, a focus seat, so there's always one seat on the board that will be a person of color. That continues to this very day. And then in 1995, when I was chapter president, we created the first diversity committee in the United States in APA. That was back in 1995. But a key turning point was a study you see on the side. That's a much younger me with Leo Vazquez, who was not feeling well and couldn't participate. We wanted to do an in-depth study to find out about what was happening with diversity in the profession, and that really was a game changer for the organization. And 3 years later, we launched a National Minority Summit to find out what was happening in our profession so that we can find out what we can do to attract more members. And then you can see on and on. I'll get into the summit in a second, but you can see other milestones, Latinos in Planning in 2006. I was the first person elected of color in 2010, and we now have a second one, Bill Anderson, a Filipino-American. So there has been some change over time, but still there's more work to do. The reason why I show this is that planning has always been about the economy, the equity, and the environment. But just like there's greenwashing, my concern, people who talk about sustainability, do more equity washing. If we're not going to deal with equity or fairness, then please don't even use the word sustainable. We have to move forward to make sure that the equity is an important ingredient if we truly want to be sustainable and sustain our organization. So what is diversity? I like to say what diversity is not. It's not meeting EEOC hiring requirements. It's not having a minority on your team in order to secure a contract or a marketing ploy to show that you're being fair or diverse. In my opinion, that is what diversity is not. What diversity is, it's very simple. It's the value of different perspectives. It's working with different cultures, race, income, disability, gender, generation. All of those things, in my opinion, is what diversity is. It's socially and morally responsible. It adds value to the decision-making process, and that's why you want a person of color on your team, because they offer a different perspective, not that they're there and you hire them to represent the black community or the Hispanic community. It is now our future. We have an ethical responsibility. In my opinion, that is what diversity is. So as I mentioned, a 2004 summit was a turning point. It was held in Washington, D.C. We had over 100 members and non-members, and they really offered a lot of input, and we received close to 500 comments that we had to digest. The key objectives of the summit was find out why people of color weren't joining or staying in APA. We wanted to look at the programs and services that APA was offering, find out if there were planning issues that we in the minority community were concerned about, validate initiatives, and hopefully develop an action plan. 4 key themes emerged from that summit. We felt that planning had low visibility in the minority community. Where it was known, it was perceived negatively because of gentrification or a variety of issues, displacement, relocation. Some felt APA was too expensive. The planning profession had few opportunities for career advancement, and they felt APA did not focus on issues that matter to planners of color. So without going too far, because I'll get into this in a second in more detail, some of the initial recommendations, we felt there needed to be more articles in Planning Magazine, there needed to be a diversity website, and I can go on to a few of these, but we felt what was important is that we needed a diversity task force to prepare a report to really summarize everything that occurred at the summit. And so after about a year, I chaired that task force. We came up with 5 key recommendations, and we presented this to the board of directors, which was accepted. What the report did not address, because we felt we did not have time and it was out of scope, was mentorship, affordability, leadership development, and career advancement. We wanted to be very focused, and we felt we can come on to these issues later on. In terms of our outreach recommendations, we felt we needed to create an ambassadors program to recruit more people of color into the profession. We wanted to establish partnerships with other organizations that had a concern for minority planners. We wanted to do some targeting, and we wanted to create a diversity and planning link on APA's website. In terms of education recommendation, we wanted to develop high school and college career packages that we can let young people know that planning was a career option, increase scholarship money, and do more outreach to high schools and colleges where there was a concentration of minority students. In terms of accountability, we want to make sure APA had staff resources, not just give members lip service, and make sure there were dollars in place to make sure these programs were implemented. And then finally, we wanted a diversity award to recognize either individuals or organizations that advanced diversity, and then we wanted more stories in Planning Magazine to tell the story of accomplished planners of people of color, because we felt there were hardly any. I challenged people, tell me 10 planning giants who are planners of color. I said, no, don't give me 10, give me 3. And people were scratching their heads because they weren't telling the story about the contributions we were making. And then in planning topics, we wanted to make sure APA covered environmental justice and gentrification and other issues that planners were dealing with on the front line, people of color. And so those were some of our recommendations. So as I conclude what happened since that summit in 2004, APA did create a listserv, which no one's using anymore, but we now have a website and Interact. We did create a permanent diversity task force. We have a number of chapters that now have their own diversity committees, such as New Jersey. There is a diversity award. We have now annual forums to make sure this stays on the radar screen. As I mentioned, we have a website. We're now making more appointments to people of color on committees. We did create the ambassadors program. We convinced PAB to include diversity as a criterion for all colleges. So now this is a new criterion. When a school's before accreditation, they have to show how they're reaching out to make sure both the professors and the student body are people of color. And then in 2006, we found that planners of color had the highest satisfaction of all APA members. So this is just a snapshot of the old web page. It is still there. It's planning.org/diversity. If you go on it, you'll find a rich amount of information. This is the ambassadors program that is still intact. We do this a lot in North Carolina. We travel to historically black colleges. We go to high schools. And all we do is just talk about planning. We don't recruit them to APA. We expose people of color to planning and let them make the choice. As I stated, chapters responded. Everything in red are those chapters that created their own diversity committees of some variation. The ones at the bottom held programs. They don't have a formal committee, but are committed to advancing diversity in a variety of ways. And then our divisions responded as well. These are the divisions that are now working together to deal with issues not just of diversity, but also of aging and the changing in our population. And now there's a commitment between chapters and divisions. And then finally, our strategic plan now reflects this as a core value of what we believe as planners, that we believe in economic, environmental, and social equity. We are inclusive and believe all people should enjoy equal opportunity, and we're committed to fairness, community engagement, choice, and collaboration. And this is just a summary of our strategic plan. These are our 5 goals that I've summarized. But as you can see, number 2 is really to work toward a more just and sustainable future. And with that, just want to leave more detail on goal number 2, lead America toward a more just and sustainable future. We now, for the first time in LA, had a Changing Faces of America track. You'll see more articles in the magazine, and you'll see this at more and more conferences. We're now asking more planners and chapters to be more active on community assistant planning teams so that, again, as you saw in the earlier slide, we want professional planners to go out there and provide pro bono services to disadvantaged communities. In our growth strategy, we're focusing on high schools and colleges, and we're doing more work and expect chapters and divisions to step up because this all cannot be done at a national level. So with that, I thank you and just wanted to make sure you had an overview about what APA has been doing, but we really need chapters and divisions and universities to help us spread the word, and in fact that is happening. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, and now we'll hand it over to Charles Brown.
All right, good afternoon. Today I come to discuss two things. First, I want to briefly discuss my place of employment, the Voorhees Transportation Center. VTC is a national leader in the research and development of innovative transportation policy. Its center is to bring to bear the full array of resources of a major research university on transportation issues of regional and national significance. I was tasked with discussing, first, how can we increase cycling among African Americans and minorities, and second, how can we provide African American communities with active transportation choices. To begin, what is cycling? Cycling is the sport or activity of riding a bicycle. A bicycle, as many of you know, is a vehicle composed of two wheels held in a frame, one behind the other, propelled by pedals and steered by handlebars. Cycling provides many benefits: health, social, transportation, environmental, and economic. While many of these benefits are well known and well documented, many African Americans are not embracing recreational cycling and are not choosing to commute to work by bicycle. As a researcher, planner, and African American, this truth concerns me. It concerns me because there was a time when African Americans relied heavily upon bicycles as a viable form of transportation. In fact, some made a decent living as competition cyclists, such as Marshall Major Taylor. And as far back as 1899, Marshall Major Taylor set records in every sprint distance from a quarter mile to 2 miles. In that same year, he won 2 titles at the World Sprint Championship and became the first black athlete in any sport to win a World Professional Championship. There are now clubs all across America bearing his name. And this inactivity by African Americans really concerned me because we are disproportionately overweight. We're not getting enough physical exercise. We're not eating balanced meals. We're watching too much television, and we're dying young. In the past 5 years, personally, I've had at least 2 friends in my home state of Mississippi die of a heart attack. I hate to say each was under 35 years old at the time. Recently, DOT provided me with an opportunity to go out and analyze the economic benefits of active transportation on New Jersey's economy. The project involved traveling throughout the state to different bicycle races and 5Ks. So I saw this as a good opportunity to ask demographic-related questions to see what percentage of African Americans were actually cycling recreationally. Some of the results from the survey, we asked which race or ethnicity best describe you, and we discovered that less than 6% of those who responded were black, with nearly 80% identifying as white. 6% is a small number when you consider that New Jersey's black population percentage is higher than the national average. When we asked about the age of black participants, we discovered that almost 43% were between ages 45 to 54 years old. When we asked about the household income of black participants, we discovered that most household incomes were between $50,000 and $75,000. But you can also see that when combined, approximately 60% of black participants had a household income beyond $75,000, with some in the $150,000 and $300,000 ballpark. And lastly, when we asked about gender, we discovered that 57% were female and approximately 43% were male. Well, what is the takeaway from that? From this survey data, from my experience, I discovered two things. First, many low-income African Americans do cycle, not necessarily because they want to, but because many of them have no other choice. It's really their only form of transportation. Second, many affluent African Americans cycle, and they do it because they're well-educated, well-informed, and can afford to pay those associated related costs to participating in races. So the group we really need to reach is middle-income Americans, African Americans. How do we encourage more of them to cycle? First, we have to conduct community outreach. It's important to meet people where they are. Second, we have to encourage more minorities to join cycle clubs. They are not only fun, but it's also a cool way to network and meet other minority cyclists. Third, we should encourage the idea of ciclovias. I attended the most recent one in LA, and it was a fantastic experience. Ciclovias are as safe can be and are good for families. We're currently planning one for the city of New Brunswick, where Rutgers is located. And fourth, we should encourage more traffic skills one-on-one classes. These classes are offered by League certified instructors through the League of American Bicyclists, and they provide participants with the basic skills needed to confidently ride in traffic and obey the rules of the road. By encouraging more minorities to become LCIs, we're helping to reinforce the idea that cycling is cool. Fifth, we should visit after-school programs and teach cycling to kids. We have to get them while they're young. I started this program when I worked for the city of Orlando, and we reached over 400 kids and gave away almost 30 bicycles to children in disadvantaged communities. All the bikes were either donated or given to us by the local police department. So how do we provide underserved communities with active transportation choices? First, we should encourage bike sharing programs in all communities. These have become popular in all the major cities throughout the U.S., including D.C. and Chicago. Second, we should advocate for more bike trails, bike racks, and bike lockers, and also bicycle infrastructure. Third, we should embrace ideas such as bike exchanges. The mission of the Bike Exchange in New Jersey is to provide low-cost, quality bikes for families and individuals. Since 2009, they've sold over 7,000 bikes and raised more than $280,000 for the Trenton and Newark Boys and Girls Club. Fourth, we should encourage the adoption of complete street policies in minority communities. Complete streets, as you know, are streets that are designed, operated, and maintained with all users in mind: cyclists, motorists, pedestrians, seniors, etc. As many of you may already know, streets in minority neighborhoods are disproportionately some of the most dangerous roads there are. This has to change, and it has to start with completing streets. Lastly, one could start an ambassador program similar to the one we launched here in New Jersey. The ambassador program is our public outreach team. This program mission is to help make New Jersey's roads safer and more attractive for use by all modes and all people. To address the issue raised, we conduct classroom outreach, on-street outreach, event outreach, and government outreach and technical assistance. The program has been very successful as we've reached over 142,000 people. That's the weighted total, and we've successfully encouraged more than 6 municipalities to adopt complete street policies this year. This list of cities include places such as New Brunswick and Newark, and also Essex County, which is the largest and one of the most diverse counties in New Jersey. So what are some of the concrete strategies? We have to start where the people are. We have to build relationships. We have to limit the jargon when we're conversing with the public. We have to involve as many people as possible in all activities from the start. We have to train people close to their homes. We have to train in locally and culturally acceptable ways. We have to train trainers who can train others. We have to involve local leadership. We should always cooperate with governments, and we should encourage interdependent relationships versus dependent or totally independent relationships. As we move forward with planning in the 21st century and beyond, transportation, specifically active transportation, has to be a priority. The health, social, environmental, and economic benefits are too much to ignore. That concludes my presentation, and I thank you all for your time.
Thank you, and now we have Karyn Williams.
Hello, thank you very much, and I'm glad to be part of this conversation. My name is Karyn Williams, and I founded Velo City about 2.5 years ago with two of my colleagues, Annalise Lopez and Naomi Dorner. And we were interested in starting an organization that would introduce high school students, particularly those from underserved communities and minorities, to careers related to urban planning. As mentioned before, I'm a landscape architect, but I am also an urban planner. And Annalise and Naomi met while they were in grad school studying planning at NYU. And the three of us really bonded over cycling, exploring the city, and also as women of color working in the planning professions. And one of the things we noted was that we hadn't been exposed to our careers until we were in undergrad. And one thing we thought that one way to attract more diversity and more minorities to the profession would be to expose students at an earlier age to these careers. So our mission really is to engage youth and high school youth specifically from underserved communities through cycling and to teach them urban planning and design for social change. We believe that if youth are engaged in cycling and exposed to mentors and professionals in these fields, in urban planning fields, then their personal vision for who they are and who they can be as adults will grow and expand. The idea is to give youth the option to see futures that they have, that they can pursue college, professional certifications, vocational trainings, and build careers in the urban planning field. So we've been operating with the 3E philosophy. The idea is to explore the built environment on bicycle. And the bike is really important because we also see it as a way for recreation, transportation, but also the bike as a metaphor for social mobility and the idea that you can advance your career through cycling. And the second ENR is about empowerment. The idea is that our students are able to discuss issues critically and assume leadership roles, and that our students at the end of the programs lead, bike to assert their family and friends. And then thirdly, envision, which is about allowing high school students to envision change and new possibilities for their communities. So we've really focused on our curriculum, which introduces students to mentors who work as urban planners, architects, urban designers, and planners as well. And we're really focusing on skills, providing students with skills that planners use, such as collaboration, technical skills, critical thinking, creativity, and public speaking and communications. Another way in which we make the connection for our students to professionals who are working in the career outside of our programs is through our blog. And I'll just quickly link to that so you guys can see what it looks like. So we often interview different professionals on our blog so that students can learn from their experience and learn how other people between cycling and urban planning. And we do try and encourage mentors who are also minorities and women to meet with our students as well. So in terms of the communities where we are working, if you look at the social indicator map in New York City, whether you're talking about obesity, poverty, or high unemployment rates, the map will generally look the same. So we've been quite intentional about the communities where we've worked. The green maps on the dots indicate where we've have summer or after-school programs or where we've conducted community workshops. And these are the communities where we really wanted to focus and where we feel that this planning, curriculum, and education would have the greatest impact. So who are our students? We have made a concerted effort in targeting a diverse group of students, and you'll see the majority of our students are of Hispanic descent, but then we do have a very almost even split between Asians and African American students as well. And we've recruited our students from high schools in the area or students who are already involved in other community organizations that we've partnered with as well. So again, these are just images from some of our programs. Now our Bikesplorations program was the first program that we started back in the summer of 2010. We began this program on the Lower East Side and Chinatown in Manhattan. And it was a 7-week program, and Bikesploration is a cycling-based curriculum for high school students that allows students to explore the connection between how the city is designed and functions with not only its environmental health, but that of its residents. Students are given bikes for use during the program, and then they learn how to safely cycle on city streets. So the Bikesplorations program really takes learning beyond the confines of 4 walls. The bicycle is a vehicle that we use to explore the city. The bike lanes, greenways, and parks is where learning takes place. Students interact and learn from professionals who, through their work, directly shape the city and affect decision making. Through these interactions plus research and map making, students learn to synthesize information and propose design or policy interventions. This is an example of the work that our students did this year in the Bronx. So they've created this bike trail, and the theme for this year was active transportation, active buildings, and healthy eating. So we did this tour, and at each point the students created a spoke card that they put in the bikes, and they also placed in the neighborhood at each spot. And there's also a hard copy map, and here's a web link too, where you can quickly show you the map that the students did and digitize this map. It's an interactive map, so people can go on and add and learn about each site that the students looked at here. So some of the challenges that we faced in this program. We've been doing this program for 2.5 years. As I mentioned earlier, we first began on the Lower East Side, and we've now expanded that program into the Bronx as well. And in New York City, there are some challenges with kids not being able to ride. So what we did now is we started offering lessons on how to ride. We'd have the students come a little bit earlier so they would practice with their riding, and by the end of the summer, the students are able to cycle much better, and they're much more confident, and we feel more comfortable having them ride on city streets. Another issue that we have in New York is finding space for meetings and also to store bikes. And this is an issue that we continue to have. We've partnered with other organizations that have helped us in terms of borrowing space, but we don't have a permanent space for our programs. And we have found that from the first summer, we only have 10 bikes, and so therefore we're only able to accept that have to turn away some students just because we weren't able to meet the demand. And so This is an issue that we continue to have, but we would like to be able to address, get to a certain point where we are able to accommodate more students in our programs, because there definitely is a demand for students to ride and also to learn about these issues that we talk about, how their communities functions and how they can actually get involved in making change in their communities. So just a short video that talks about our program.
Hi, my name is Connor Quinn. I've been with Bike Explorations for 7 weeks, and I'm 15 years old. During the program, we have gone around the area, learned about composting. We've learned about green roofs and green spaces as well, and we've learned about how to help our community in simple ways, such as putting up bike racks and putting in a petition for the repaving of a specific road. What I like most about Bike Explorations is that I can explore a new area that I've to it, and if I ever do something around this area again, I will know what interesting things there are, how to get there, and, you know, little secluded areas that are actually pretty nice.
All right, so that was just a video from one of our students from our first year that we ever did the program, just giving you an idea about his experiences in the program. So this year we launched, and this program, we launched it in Brooklyn, and it was 11 weeks, and its idea to really focus on, take it beyond urban planning introductory course, but to really focus on advocacy and developing leadership who advocate for the public and their families. So during the program, the teams investigated architecture, urban planning, and design using a program toolkit that we developed. And the participants learned new sets of skills on how to look at the city and how to think about their neighborhoods and how to, and again, in this program as well, students were introduced to professionals from different design fields, and they used what they learned to participate. Students learned how to actively, at the end of the program, students learned how to actively work for improvements in their community. So this is one of the maps that the students created as associated with the Brooklyn tour. And they, in this area, they focused on neighborhood change and how you can incorporate, how cycling could be a benefit to this neighborhood. And we focused in the Fort Greene downtown Brooklyn neighborhood. So this is an image of our students leading a bike tour at one of the stops on the tour. And this is the first stop on the tour is at Fort Greene Park. So some of the challenges that we met with this program was that, again, while there was a lot of interest in the program, we did have difficulty with students attending on a regular basis. I think what has also helped us in other past programs was having strong community partnerships, and we're still working on developing those in Brooklyn, as this was the first time doing a summer program in Brooklyn. This year, our students, the service-oriented project that they did was they participated with Transportation Alternatives. They are a local nonprofit organization in New York City that really advocates for public transportation and pedestrian and cycling transportation options. And they have this new bike-friendly business district, and our students participated in this campaign by making short speeches and pitches to different businesses in the area and asking them to become a part of the bike-friendly district. We've also participated in after-school programs. These are year-long programs, and they're usually with high schools in Brooklyn. And where we have an urban planning curriculum where we're teaching students about mapping, the basics of urban planning introductory. And there's with the after-school programs, there's also an earn a bike component, so that through participation in the program, students in the second semester learn bike mechanics, and they learn how to build their own bikes. And by the spring semester, when we're taking bike rides around the neighborhood, they're using the bikes that they built. These are just some of the images of students from our after-school programs. For these programs, we've partnered with Recycle a Bicycle, and they are another nonprofit in New York City that they run bike shops, and they do environmental education, and they're the ones who are doing the bike mechanic portion of the program. Showing off the bikes that they built during the program. And some of the challenges that we face with the after-school program has been attracting and retaining girls. I think it's probably the reason of the bike mechanic portion, not many as girls are interested in that portion of it. We had a number of girls in the first half of the semester, but then when we switched to the second semester, that's when we saw mostly the boys, which came into the program. And another difficulties we've had was that many of the students, particularly at one high school, were made fun of when with their helmets and their bikes. And that made some students also not feel comfortable and not want to join part of the program, even though they were motivated. But peer pressure was the greater factor, or an issue that we had to overcome. And in all our programs, students are required to wear a helmet. And there's always this reluctance to put the helmet on because it seems not meaningful. Interested, and the fact that they were given bikes outweighed all the other challenges related to being made fun of and not wanting to wear a helmet. So as part of our work, we've also engaged in a coalition. As I'd mentioned earlier, we first started working on the Lower East Side in Chinatown, and in 2011 we joined in with 8 other community groups to really engage communities to envision the future of biking in these 2 diverse neighborhoods. And as an urban planner, this was a really dream opportunity to really engage with community and to facilitate a conversation about change and development in the neighborhood before in advance of any changes or infrastructure being made. So as part of that, we held community visioning sessions, and for the last 2 summers, we also had a youth ambassadors program. I'll just quickly show you some images from the work that the students did this summer. It was interesting to note that in this neighborhood, they're feeling the pressures of gentrification, and many people felt that the bike lanes were down. What was interesting was being able to speak with communities, with people in the community. It wasn't we were able to sort of get through what the real issue was, that really, yes, housing, gentrification, and jobs were an issue, but people began to, through these conversations and through the youth participating, to see how bikes could actually benefit the community in terms of providing job opportunities, recreational opportunities as well, and alternate transportation options in the neighborhoods as well. So the students created a wayfinding project talking about, related to cycling, encouraging people to get out and explore the neighborhood on bike. And this is a map and some of the images from that project that you're seeing right now. And these are the students, some of our students from the Local Spokes Coalition that were participated in our first summer in 2011. So we've also tried to continue in training our students who participated in our programs to develop their leadership skills and to lead community design charrettes. And this is one design charrette that was held in January at the New School. And these are some of the students from our program and another program in Manhattan and Queens who came together to facilitate these local community design workshops, envisioning change. So using found materials, the students worked as leaders to participants to really redesign and healthy food options. And these are some of the models that came out of those workshop sessions in January. And this is another image from that workshop. Again, in the spring, we also participated in another workshop. We facilitated a workshop on the Sheridan. The Sheridan is a small highway in the Bronx, just north of Manhattan. And the community's been advocating for shutting down this highway and allowing, in the bottom image, you see it to be opened permanently for cycling and recreational, similar to like a cyclovia activity. So we held a design workshop and really asking people to think about different ideas. And our students not only participated but acted as facilitators for the public during these design workshop sessions. So in terms of just a summary as a conclusion to wrap up our programs and our mission and what we're really at their neighborhoods and to learn and connect with professional mentors who are actively working to improve the built environment, so whether through design and decision makers as well and policy. And at the end, we are equipping participants in our program with skills for college, being able to lead a bike related to urban planning and design, and also helping their communities to improve and also becoming more engaged citizens as well. So this last slide is just if you'd like some more information about VeloCity and where you can find us on Facebook and on Twitter and our email address as well. And that's it. I'll turn it over to Tiffany now.
Okay, thank you, Karyn. All right, so as Karyn just showed, her experience has been with the high school students. I'm going to go into my experience with middle school students. Now, I have worked in, I've worked in two different programs. One, I worked as a citizen school volunteer teacher. That was in spring of 2011. And then I also worked as part of our chapter, a volunteer teacher for our chapter's Community Planning Assistance Program. Both of those programs happen to be in Newark schools, but I'm just going to focus on my citizen school experience. So Citizen Schools is a nationally recognized after-school program that really focuses on low-income middle schools. And within that community, learning to educate the children and helping to strengthen the community at the same time. Now, there's a lot of information on Citizen Schools, but I don't want to go into that. But this is the information, and it's actually a award-winning program. So how I actually got involved in Citizen Schools is that I went to one of the schools that we were working with for Safe Routes to School, and they were having a presentation. And I came across this Your Blockology program, the apprenticeship that they were presenting on, and I thought, you know what, this is really great. And while I was there, something caught my eye, which was a letter to Mayor Booker. And it was a letter written by this student that explained that they wanted to have more transportation changes in their neighborhood and talked about all the different reasons why. And I thought, you know what, I would love to be involved in something like that. So I decided I was going to be a citizen school teacher, and as part of that, you have to come up with a 10-week curriculum. So I didn't start from scratch. There is a curriculum out there from the Oregon DOT for their Safe Routes to School program called Neighborhood Navigators. So I started with that, but it was really more of that safe routes to school, you know, how do you get around safely and how do you get to school. And I really wanted it to be more about teaching students about the community planning process and being able to empower them with the skills that they need to discuss urban issues in their neighborhood. So even if they didn't end up in careers in planning, at least they will be a part of a generation that will be more engaged in their communities. So I entitled my course Neighborhood Navigators. So I'm just going to go through what we learned, what we did, and what we found. The way that I set up the curriculum is to teach them about who planners are, what they do, also incorporating walkable communities, the benefits of walking and biking, how to conduct a walkability assessment, collecting mapping and census information, and ways to present our case, both written, verbally, and in pictures, and the process and the decision makers in their community. I felt that it was important that if they were really to learn planning and how things are done, that they really needed to have all these skills, because we as planners do have all these skills, and that's how we get by in our careers. So what we learned about the Safe Routes to School program, what the goals are for the New Jersey program, and what they weren't aware of is that their school, Ivy Hill, already had a Safe Routes to School plan. Because of the turnover in the school in terms of administration, the principal was not aware of this plan. So not only was I teaching students, I was also teaching the administration about the Safe Routes to School plan. We learned about the way a street is designed and how it influences how people drive. And most of them actually knew the answer to this, whereas you throw this up with some adults and they might, you know, say number one. But we also learned about crosswalks. Many of these students told me that they do not cross in the crosswalk, but that also when they walk with their parents didn't walk in the crosswalk. We also learned how the local government works. We learned that it's not just, you know, the mayor does everything. There is a council, and there is an order to things. So if you want to get something done, you don't just tell Mayor Booker. There are other offices, like engineering. If we're dealing with sidewalks, we have to also include the engineer. So we included that. Testing their traffic safety knowledge. Because I heard of unsafe cycling and unsafe walking, proper things should be when walking in the school neighborhood. We also talked about their vision for the community, and we did this visioning priority exercise to talk about if you were to walk and bike in Newark, what are the things that would make you comfortable in your community that you would like to see? So we went ahead and did those, and they voted with their dots on the things that they wanted to see. We also talked about transportation and the various modes of how people. And they were very surprised by the sheer number of people in Newark. And also, you know, we used that opportunity to explore other cities and see what the populations were compared to where they lived. We also did a walkability assessment of the school neighborhood. They enjoyed this because they got to get out of class and actually walk around. And what we found, this was our general route around the school neighborhood. And the school neighborhood actually includes another school further up. But while we were out there, oh, I'm sorry, I'll get to that other stuff later. We also talked about how to redesign the school playground. One of the things that I constantly heard was, our playground is barren. There's nothing here. We have 2 hoops. We want to make it better. So what I did was I actually had 2 of my colleagues come in and talk about how they could look at the school playground. So Charlie, who is a landscape architect, was able to come in and talk about the actual design of the playground, whereas Mike, who is an engineer, we also talked about bike parking. Mike, as an engineer, was able to help them cite exactly where that bike parking would be. And so we sent them outside, these 2 students, with Mike to actually go around the school and actually point out where would be a good location. What they're pointing at is the camera. We talked about if you're going to have bike parking, make sure that it's visible. So they pointed out that there was a camera there and that that might be an ideal location. We also talked about bike parking with our principal. When I first walked into class and I said, does anyone bike? I got all these Snickers, and they said, yeah, we don't bike around here. Our bikes would get stolen. So I said, okay, well, how about we talk to the principal about secure parking? They said, what's the point in that? He's not going to listen. So one of the magical moments that came out of this 10-week experience is when I actually said, the students want to talk to Mr. Outlaw. Mr. Outlaw said, okay. And he actually came to the classroom. We had these questions for him. He sat down and he listened to the concerns. And what came out of it was that he told us that they were already planning to have improvements at the playground. So he would take the students' information and make sure that it was a part of the playground development. Some other things that we found: that community conditions make it hard to walk. Our crosswalks are as visible as the other schools in the area, and that's something that they were very intent on fixing or having fixed. We need more green and less litter, of course. And we felt uncomfortable walking where we see gang graffiti. Now, this wasn't an issue for everyone. My quietest student actually pointed this out to me. This is her actual route home, and so while it wasn't a problem for the other students, it directly affected her. So I was sure to point out, if it's anything that makes you uncomfortable, you are totally entitled to express that in our walkability. Watch where you walk. Some dangerous conditions. So at the end of the 10-week period, the students had to put on what is called a WOW showcase. It's called WOW because most people usually say WOW when they see the presentations. So what they did was we put together a board. What you see there is the students talking to the public. That's both the teachers and the parents come in and see the different things that they have put together that show what they've learned over this 10-course period. So what they put together was a who, what, and where board that discusses the improvements that they wanted to see to their neighborhood. Now, the board was a collage displaying their ideas of who would benefit from the improvements, what the benefits would be, and what their priorities are and where the improvements should be. So at the end of our WOW, I gave them a pledge. And really, I wanted them to be able to walk away from this apprenticeship, not just having, done something after school for fun, to really say, understanding that what you did here, you can do outside of your community. You can do outside in the community. You don't have to just, take this information and not do anything with it. I wanted them, so the pledge says they have a better understanding of their community, how planning works, how they can encourage the creation of healthy and active school communities, and really just taking pride in the role that they can play, not just in their school, but in the greater community of Newark. So that's me and my students with their pledges. And I have to say, in thinking about this, putting this together, thinking, did you really have an influence? Well, this is what I learned. Students learn things, but I also learn things. Students can be very candid in their thoughts and impressions. As I was maybe, I don't know, on the 4th week of doing this, a student said, wow, you actually know what you're talking about. And that was a really great moment for me because I thought, hey, I guess I do know what I'm talking about. They also like PowerPoints. They expressed to me that, no one has really taught to us like this. And the ability for them to be able to go outside and do hands-on things and actually have their words being heard by adults, I think it really meant a lot to them. And then when you think they're not paying attention, they are paying attention to everything. I come into class and they say, hey, you changed your nails. And then this one girl told me, you're so goth. I said, really? I didn't think I was, but okay. So after I left the class on my last day, these students gave me some cards, and here are just some of the different things that they wrote in their cards, the things that they learned, the things that they liked. I appreciate how you took the time to teach me about planning. Thank you for teaching me about safety. I learned so much about the streets. So, I think it was great that they actually were absorbing things. One of the highlights of it is that the school actually got a new playground. I would love to take credit for it, but I cannot. So I thought it was really great. This was a legacy project from the 8th grade students. This is what they decided to leave their school, was the redesigned playground. So the playground went from this to this. And so I'm really proud that they were able to take that information, express what they wanted to, and actually see it come to fruition. So that's it. Thank you for listening. And I guess we'll take some questions now. Okay, let's see. All right, so we have a question for Karyn. All right. Some studies show that helmets reduce bike usage. An example is in Europe, where bike helmets are not required and are not frequently used, while bicycle usage is increased. Would VeloCity consider revising the rule of wearing helmets, or is that mandated by law? Karyn, are you still there?
Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you now.
Tiffany, can you hear me? Okay,
yep.
Sorry. So to answer the question, it is required by law. Anybody under the age of 14 must wear a helmet. And also our insurance. You know, it costs us a good portion of our budget does go to paying for insurance, because I guess many people think that riding with kids in New York City is not a safe activity. So as part of our insurance, we have to require that students wear helmets. And another thing I think that's the difference, because I've heard a lot of people talking about the helmet issue and comparing cycling in North America versus Europe. But one of the differences I think that is key is that routes here are designed differently. They're much wider, and cars are traveling at a much faster speed than you might find in some European cities, where cycling is, you know, there is much greater infrastructure. It's different. I don't think we can compare cycling, say, in Amsterdam versus New York City just as yet in terms of safety. I think that here we still have a little ways to go. And I wouldn't feel safe taking students out on the road without wearing helmets in New York.
Got it. There is actually another question for you. What are some realistic challenges that VeloCity face with introducing bike transportation to low-income communities?
Again, so some of the challenges we faced were students, just the attendance, being able to have students to continue to show up because they have other things going on in their life. What we try to do to help with that is we provide stipends for students who participate in our program, recognizing that, you know, without this, some students wouldn't necessarily be able to participate in the program. So we try to eliminate any sort of financial barriers that might exist to participate in a summer program, like if you taking time away from doing a summer job. So that's how we address that challenge.
Okay, let's see. This could go for either Karyn or Charles. Can you identify a city or town that has the best retrofitted bike pathways?
The best retrofit for me, this is Charles. I'm sort of biased to Chicago, the city of Chicago. I think they're doing an excellent job with their bicycle infrastructure. I had an opportunity to present there this year during an ITE conference full of all engineers from around that area. And I think their transportation department right now is ahead of the curve in terms of the infrastructure that they are implementing in that city. And that's not too short Portland nor New York City, because I think those places have good infrastructure as well. But I like Chicago best. It seems safer for me.
I would say, Charles already mentioned New York, but I would also say I recently came back from Vancouver, Canada, and they have a great network of cycling infrastructure that they have retrofitted into the downtown, and the network extends beyond, the downtown core to the more suburban areas, and it feels very safe to ride your bike in Vancouver.
Okay, Karyn, you are a popular woman. I have another question for you. How would you suggest starting a program like VeloCity in another city?
I would suggest that what's been key for us has been partnerships. Was that we couldn't have done it all on our own. We partnered with a larger organization. I mentioned Recycle Bicycle at first. They do bike mechanics, and they also have bike shops. So they provided the bikes for us. And again, when we expanded our program into the Bronx, it was through a partnership with another community organization, the Bronx River Alliance, that allowed us to start our programs there. So again, partnerships, and I would say being dedicated to fundraising, because the costs there's some serious cost implications with starting a program like that. So fundraising and partnerships, those are the two key things that I would say would be key for starting the program in a similar city. And if you'd be, I can share my email if you would like to talk more offline. I'd be more than willing to share in more depth our experience about starting VeloCity.
Great, thank you. Now this can be, anyone can answer this. What are some programs that could work for recruiting undecided college students?
When you say undecided, are you speaking towards planning in general? If so, what we've been successful at doing here at Rutgers, my Ambassadors in Motion program, it is marketed and targeted towards undergraduate and graduate students here. And it's been a very, I think, useful tool in terms of recruitment into planning, because, first of all, many minorities need internships or job opportunities upon acceptance into graduate and undergraduate programs. So if they're not interested right away into cycling, they become interested once they have an opportunity to serve as an ambassador, because they have an opportunity to travel throughout the entire state of New Jersey. They go into a plethora of different neighborhoods, whether they're black, white, or any other ethnicity. And I think it has led to an increase in confidence. Students, they didn't have any experience traveling into the heart of a city such as Newark or Camden. Those places can be somewhat intimidating if you're not from those areas. So I had a situation where students were afraid to actually get out of the car. But later on, when I convinced them to get out of the car and the community embraced us while we were there, I think that was they learned very early on that you can't judge a community by the headlines in the news. So I think one way to do it is to definitely have an ambassador program of some sort in your town, city, or on a college campus.
And let me add, this is Mitchell. We've tried this program. It hadn't worked yet, and I don't know why. We are starting a youth planning council in our city. It's now in the works. The reason why I'm going in that direction, we have asked every time we do a neighborhood plan we asked the local community to give us a young person to shadow us through the process so they can understand how the planning process works. And we'd like them to come from the neighborhood so they would have a different orientation about how planning works. That's right now I'm making that a condition. In the past, people said, we love the idea, and then they don't show up with the youth person, and it takes a couple of meetings. If they're not there from the beginning of the scoping, it's hard to get someone engaged and catch up. So that's something I'd encourage people to see whether it works for them. Secondly, we do have free internships. We have specific projects in our Urban Design Center. Fortunately, that's where a lot of people want to be engaged because it's planners, urban designers, architects, landscape architects in our department. And it tends to be a little bit more interactive and hands-on, and the projects have a very short timeline, so they can actually be involved in those projects. But those are ways, I think, if they're on the fence, if they get the practical experience and see how the process works, it's helpful. But we're really trying, particularly in disadvantaged parts of our city, to really ask them to let us have one young person shadow us through the process, and hopefully that experience will give them a different view about whether they want to get in planning or not. But to me, that's kind of the best exposure they can get.
I agree. That's great. Great. Let's see. We have a question from Houston. It says, I host bi-weekly bike rides in Houston's transitioning communities. We've had a great turnout, but I want to know how to connect our participants to get them to become active in planning projects. Take this.
Sure. So one thing that we have done was, in addition to our youth program, and we also lead thematic bike tours. So me and my two co-founders. And we have found that that's one way of engaging people. We use them as fundraisers, but also, and there's usually a talk associated with it. So that's one way it's been successful at engaging people, getting people involved in the issues. Because it's in a sort of fun, low pressure type environment. Last spring we did a bike tour. We had somebody from Con Edison lead a bike tour around the different power plant sites along the East River in Brooklyn and in Manhattan. Our students have also, the tours that they actually lead, I think they might even be more effective in getting people interested in about planning-related topics, that people that wouldn't have otherwise been interested, particularly their parents, because we invite family and friends to come on their tours as well. And so they've been also really successful at getting people interested in planning topics and not just cycling.
Right. Good. And let's see, I think this is probably the last question so far. Unless anyone else has some, you can still write in. Communities in the Bronx that VeloCity worked within have large immigrant populations. Was that an advantage or disadvantage when working within these communities?
I don't see it as having been a disadvantage. I think the first year we ran a program, we had students, a more diverse student population, and then I think what happened is we started to have students who enjoyed it and came back and they recruited their friends. And a majority of those students were either first or second generation immigrants. So we found that actually has not been a disadvantage in terms of participation in our programs. And interestingly enough, too, our program in the South Bronx, our second year, this was the first year where we had a majority of our students were actually girls. So some of the issues we've had with girls and recent immigrant girls from immigrant families being allowed to participate by their family in our programs, we've had those issues in Brooklyn, but we didn't experience those issues in the Bronx.
As a follow-up to that, how did you get the girls to be more involved this time around?
Well, it's one thing that's really interesting that they did like peer pressure. So one girl, she came, she enjoyed it, and she really recruited all her friends at school. So I think there's really something to be said for peer-to-peer recruitment. You know, their friend said, you know, I wasn't going to do it, but, you know, she said she was going to do it, and she had a good time, so she told me to sign up. So I did it, and then it was through word of mouth. That's how it worked for us in the Bronx.
I would sign on to that same line of thinking, because when I did my apprenticeship, you actually have to audition for the class, and the students choose to be in your apprenticeship. And I got some that really did not want to be there, but you know, so they chose not to be in it. But then after a couple of weeks, you know, the friends that were still there said, "Oh, this is really great." I saw them back in class and said, "Oh, I thought you dropped my apprenticeship." No. So it really is you know, if you get a few students interested, you can really build interest that way as they speak to each other.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. I don't see that there are any more questions. So I just want to thank everyone for participating in the webinar, and thank you for your great questions. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, thanks, Tiffany.
The CM credits, there's a note about the CM, the code.
Yes. If you need to log your CM credit, please use the event code 22215. Okay, and like Ben said, all of our PowerPoints will be available as a PDF, probably a